We have just created a framework for funding for elite athletes. The cabinet have approved a development framework and development criteria for funding for elite athletes in this country. And we're working with the National Sports Council, which is the state-owned enterprise, and also the Barbados Olympic Association, to move most of our emerging athletes into elite athlete status.
All right, hi, my name is Sean Dupini. I am a teacher at Springer Memorial, teach technical drawing and woodwork, and also on the coaching staff at Springer Memorial and the head coach at UE for the UE Blackbirds. I worked with a couple of NFL players on speed development when I was in the US, basically in Houston. On my return home, I was asked to work with a couple of athletes just to get them heading in the direction that we needed to go. So it went from there and being prompted by my headmistress at the time, which was Pauline Benjamin, to make sure that we're getting at least one scholarship from the school every year. So, and that's where it all started. Let me say that's where it all snowballed from, and that was in 2011. With the first athlete going to the University of Houston and us making a connection with that university and moving from there. So every year after that, we were sending out an athlete, maybe an athlete from Springer Memorial or some other school. We just made sure that we had an athlete every year that was being fitted into the right system. So we look at athletes, we look at their development, and we try to figure out what's the best environment for them to be in. So it's not just getting them on a scholarship, but trying to find the correct environment for them where they'll flourish and they'll be beneficial to us as Barbadians, beneficial to the school, because we want to develop Olympians out of this whole process. So between 2011 and now, we've sent over, I would say over 40 athletes that we've sent out of Barbados on scholarship. And these athletes are being taken care of very well by the system that they're in. So we just need to push a little bit more to make sure that we're getting a little bit more from what we have. Over the years, we've seen great talent coming from Barbados. But the thing is, what are we doing to facilitate after they've finished their collegiate career? Because right now, as long as you're in the university, they're going to take very good care of you. You're beneficial to them. Now, what are we going to do after they're finished with the university? We're going to rely on the university to continue to take care of our Barbadian athletes, or do we find other avenues to make sure that we're taking care of them before they really hit it big?
This has to do with education as well. When we develop our specialist sports center, and indeed the talks are on the table to make one of our secondary school that specialist sports center, and that's why the Minister of Education is pushing me, because at the end of the day, when we have our athletes, the creme de la creme from an early age that we spot them and we put them into an institution where they will develop their sport and discipline, we're now talking about world class. We're now talking about competing with the very best. They go to school and you have world class coaches where they would go to school to only focus on not only their academics, but their sport and discipline. And that is why the member for St. Michael's Southeast is pushing me, because it is a joint effort between the Ministry of Sports and the Ministry of Education.
Some of the hardships that we had is at times once school is closed, cafeteria is closed, your meal plan is closed, so you have to figure out how you're going to eat for that week. So these are some of the things that we don't want them going through. If you're going to be told that you have to come home and compete for nationals in order to represent your country, some of these athletes don't have the money to come home, so they're going to call the coach. So we have to figure out how we're going to get them home, where they're going to stay, transportation to and from practice. So these are all areas that we have to look at. I know for sure several of the coaches are going to have to pick up athletes, drop them places, make sure that they're eating, make sure they get into practice on time, So it's a continuous process that we have to deal with. So the other thing that we were trying to do was set up something where we have financing in place to take care of these athletes when they're coming. One story that I had that I was very disappointed with the situation, and it was something that Shane Brathwaite had mentioned to me when he was here, and this was a little while back. Shane went to a meet in Mexico, and on him entering the airport, there was a picture of Shane, a big poster of Shane welcoming Shane to Mexico. Shane is not from Mexico, but at the same time, there's nothing of Shane Brathwaite when Shane Brathwaite comes home. Shane is going to come home, probably get a ride from the airport to his house, and that's it. So there's nothing here that says, Shane, we appreciate what you're doing for us. We appreciate the sacrifices that you have made for us. And it is a sacrifice because you're putting the majority of your life on hold and dedicating it to a career that, at the end of the day, I think the ones that get the most benefit from a career like that is us as Barbadian citizens. So what are we going to do in the meantime to make sure that these athletes appreciate, that we appreciate what they're doing for us? Those are the things as coaches that we are trying to do. Our group may not meet at a formal meeting, but we have our discussions and we try to figure out the best things that we can do for our athletes. And right now, we're falling short. I really think we're falling short, and we need to find additional ways to get things done. We have this saying that sport, we take it as sport. It's just playing around. But it is a career. And in order for us to keep a lot of athletes in that career, we need to make sure that we treat it as such.
Trent, answer the call, and let me do this one like a basketball and bounce back. School open up and we going back. Bounce back. Make sure your school books in the hammer sack. Bounce back. Positive attitude must be intact. Bounce back. Be vigilant and be on track. Yes, enjoy your learning when you go back to class. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do your math. Any test the teacher give ya, work hard and pass. Full marks every time, smile and laugh. Respecting your teachers, that's the right path. Make your parents proud, that's the next half. Returning to school, happiness, full blast. Protocol still on the broadcast, so make sure that you sanitize and put on your mask. And bounce back. School open up and we going back. Bounce back.
We are speaking about creating elite athletes and emerging athletes, but we don't have a biomechanics framework like the first world countries, and what that is. I'm not going to get into the technical details of what biomechanics is. Biomechanics basically would tell you, and I love cricket, so I will speak to cricket. Biomechanics, if you are bowling at around 110 miles per hour, and those persons...
Miles? Kilometers?
Kilometers, sorry. I'm talking about a car now, sorry. and you're bowling at 110 kilometers per hour. But yet we see the potential in you that you can generate up to like 140 kilometers per hour. Biomechanics teach you that. It studies the body movement. It studies every single action. How you move, even in your batting, your technical flaws. And that is why India is producing so many world-class cricketers, because they have a biomechanics framework in place. We don't have anything like that in this country. But I'm pleased to report that in this estimate, this government, under the leadership of Mayor Amor Motley, has placed money to fully develop the biomechanics framework. But what it does also, it also creates jobs opportunities, sports science, in the area of sports science for people. And I'm pleased to report that in the estimates on the sports, we have allocated funding to develop the biomechanics framework in this country to help our elite athletes to enhance their performance and to optimize it. Not only, yes, to optimize it, that's the word, to optimize the performances.
There are things that we're not set up to deal with. So a university in the US may be able to go and provide counseling for an athlete. They might be able to provide therapy for an athlete. They may be able to provide surgeries when that athlete needs it. All the physical and mental care that that athlete needs while they're competing. There are a lot of things that we're not set up to do as yet. I know we're working towards these things, but we're not there as yet. And until we get there, then a lot of our athletes are going to go overseas and go where the competition is. They're going to go where the care is. And right now, none of our serious Olympic athletes are here because they're not going to get the care that they need while they're here. So we need to push to a point where we can get there, and we can say to somebody like Shane, okay, you can stay in Barbados, we'll take care of you, and you focus on your track and field. That's all you have to focus on. And that is how successful athletes become successful. It becomes an addiction. So the only thing that you're focusing on is the track and field. All the other things are secondary. I want to get to a point where I can see where we have, and I keep mentioning Shane because that's the one that comes, but we also have Tia Dana Bell, and Tia has been doing very well throughout the years. But I want to see those athletes here and we taking care of them better than anybody else can. And we're encouraging them to stay in the sport. And that is what we need to do. Give them that encouragement, give them that motivation to stay in the sport. Right now, I know that there's a biomechanical program that's being taught at LSU, and there's somebody that actually comes in and deal with that program from the outside. But we need hands-on. We need to go through the system. We need to see what our season program is like. We need to see what the weightlifting program is going to be like. We need to see what the pre-competition program is like. We need to see what the in-season, what the competition program is like. When something goes wrong, how do you deal with it? Athlete gets hurt, but yet still you have a major competition coming up in about 4 weeks. How are you dealing with that athlete to get them ready for that competition? Those are the hands-on things that we need to see and we need to deal with. A lot of us that have been through the system, like I said, Mr. King, Burnett, myself, we've been through the system. We know how the system works. There are things that are changing that we may not be familiar with because we're out of the system to some extent. So we're constantly calling coaches, we're talking to coaches, we're seeing, all right, what's changed? I know I try to communicate with my coaches as well. And the guys at Houston, I try my best to get information from them. We talk with the athletes, we figure out, how are you dealing with certain things mentally, physically, what are the changes that you're going through, what would make it easier for you. Those are things that we're trying to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But it'll be a lot easier for us if we're in the system and we're on the ground and we're seeing exactly how things are being dealt with and how things are being corrected. And there's no perfect season. Something goes wrong. But this is where the experience comes in and you know how to deal with it. If we're not being taught to deal with it, then like we would say, hey, you're trying a thing. And I don't want to try a thing dealing with somebody's child. Because at the end of the day, they're still, while they're in our hands the majority of times, they're still children. And we need to make sure that we're doing right by them.
Because we saw and we see the value in having our young people engage in sports, not only for recreational reasons, but as a career choice. And based on that, Mr. Speaker, sports has to take its rightful place in this country as being one of the key economic pillars.
Right now we have from what was said, the BOA and the AABs in this initiative, so I know we will be guided in the right direction. So I was extremely happy. The only thing that I don't want to happen is how we handled Ryan. Because I think Ryan, there was a lot of excitement around Ryan as well. And I didn't think that we handled Ryan in the best way that we could have. And now this is another opportunity, based on what was said by the minister, to make sure that we don't fall short again. Because it was excellent what I heard. So now we have to make sure that we follow through on all those commitments, and not necessarily this Olympics, but the next Olympics, but the next World Games. I would like to see some type of profits from that investment that is being made through cabinet and through the government. I think it's something that we have, it's a foundation that we can build on. It's something that we can definitely develop. One of the things that we have had to do over the years is contact the school and rely on our relationships with coaches. And the majority of times, either the coaches are paying their own way to get here, and then we have to facilitate accommodations for them and transportation, or we have to pay for it because we're asking them to do us a favor. It's not an easy thing to tell a parent, okay, well, we know it's the summer, the school is closed, the child is hungry, and I can't help. That's not an easy thing to tell a parent, because as a parent, I would be extremely annoyed. I would want my child home. But at the same time, is it the best option right now? The best thing for them is to stay there, struggle through it, and try to make it through to the next semester when you're going to get back and start doing what you need to do, because training never stops. So once again, I'm very, very pleased that the government realizes that there's a void that needed to be filled, and they're willing to step in. I know it's not an easy task at this time to really do, but it just shows the commitment and it shows the foresight from whoever's making those decisions. It shows that intelligence that, yes, there is a void. There's so much we can gain from it, so we need to step in and help out where we can. And I would say that is something that I can definitely say a thank you in advance for, because we know that our government is really going to come through and help us out when our athletes need it.
So the time has come that out of the 60,000 young people that we have in this country, I strongly believe that 45,000 to 50,000, or if not all, should be enrolled in a sports program at primary and at secondary level. We no longer can see sport as secondary to curriculum. We no longer can see it. It is part of the curriculum in this country if we are to really create global citizens who can take the world by storm and become millionaires, and also aid to the economic development and also their own development in first world. We must be able to compete with every single country in most of our sporting disciplines.
We're going to push athletes from throughout our system, but it makes me even more proud when I can say that we have a student that's doing her master's in the US that is doing well academically, and she's continuing to do what she has to do athletically to make sure that her way is being paved. And Tristan Evelyn is already starting her master's program. So there are several opportunities through athletics that our parents may have not seen when we were a lot younger, but now we can see that other people are seeing it. And this is where we're looking at the experience of government again to realize that there are the opportunities that are there for these athletes. Now, one thing that we've tried to do on another stage was to get some of the professional athletes here training. Because if we can take somebody from one of the poor neighborhoods and we're going to put them with a NFL player or in a camp with an NFL player that they're going to see what these NFL players are doing on a regular basis, they're going to say, but this is nothing that I can't do. And we're going to start seeing, as long as the opportunities are there, these are things that we're very capable of doing. And one thing that I will remember that Dr. Cattle pushed, because she was one of my coaches. My first coach was Mitchell Holder, and he passed me on to Dr. Cattle. One of the things that Dr. Cattle always pushed to me in a short space of time is that what you're doing now other people are doing. There are things that you are doing now better than other people that were training ahead of you, and you just need to stay on pace. And this is something that we need to get across to a lot of our younger athletes. What you're doing now is nothing different than what other people are doing, but we just need to stay on track, stay in your lane, and get the job done. And as long as we can see that, as long as we can show the younger athletes that, then they're going to be successful. There's so many things that our local talent has done once they've stepped away from our system. And it's nothing wrong with the system, is that the opportunities were not there. So once we can provide the opportunities, provide the avenues for them, then we will start flourishing even more as a country. And those are the things that we're trying to get across to all of our athletes, to all of our citizens. The opportunities are there. We gotta find them, and we gotta facilitate how we're gonna get other people to those opportunities. But within the next, I would say by the next Olympics, by the next 12 months, let's start there first. The next 12 months, based on what's projected from here at UE, I think we should have a structured program in place that is going to see the development of athletes within the next, I would say, 4 years when we're looking at Olympics again. I honestly would like to see Mario on an Olympic stage with a medal. I would like to see Tristan Evelyn. I would like to see Tristan Gibbons. So I would like to see those athletes on the Olympic stage, on the medal podium, doing extremely well for us. And that is the end game.